Hi, I'm Chris the Counsellor, and this is part 4 and the final part in the key concepts in person-centred counselling. So well done on making it this far. Hopefully you've made your way through part 1, 2 and 3 and understood some of the main concepts in person-centred counselling. In this final video, I'm going to outline 4 theories which are really essential in the person-centred approach. The first 2 of those theories came from Rogers himself, and the last 2 were more modern developments that have been added to the person-centred approach. Now, the first one that I want to look at are Rogers' 7 stages of process. Now, in this, Rogers outlines 7 different stages which a client might move through in the process of therapy. This goes right from stage 1, where a client might not even engage in therapy. They would be quite fixed in their beliefs, quite rigid, and as a result not see a need for therapy. And this goes right through the other stages through to stage 7, where a client would be ready to terminate therapy and no longer have a need for it. Now, obviously, clients can move through these stages in different ways, go back and forth. It isn't a linear process. But what Rogers is doing in this is setting out 7 unique stages where you can see that clients are at different places in their journey of counselling. Now, because this is a bit of a detailed theory and needs more explanation, I will make a separate video on the 7 different stages of process. But for the purposes of this video, you just need to understand that it is a theory that Rogers came up with himself, which outlines 7 different stages of process which a client might go through during therapy. Now, the next theory that I want to outline are Rogers' 19 propositions. Now, this is an outline of a theory of personality from a person-centred point of view. They can be really quite hard to understand because Rogers wrote them in quite a scientific way. Now, Tony Merry kind of translated these propositions into layman's terms, and they're a lot easier to understand, although I do think something is lost from Rogers' original propositions. Basically, what these 19 propositions aim to do is to outline the theory of personality in a person-centred point of view. So what this does is it outlines how we operate in the world, how we become people with our beliefs and values and our behaviours, and also how therapy or certain conditions can help us return to a more congruent and natural state. It's a really great way to understand how people develop, change, and heal through their process of life. Really, it gives the whole person-centred theory in a nutshell. But as I say, it can be quite hard to understand. What I'm going to aim to do at some point is to make a video that goes through all of these 19 propositions. Now, that might be about 3 hours in total, but I'm going to try and find a way to make it a bit shorter, to try and explain it in simple terms. But I will put a link as soon as I've made a video explaining the 19 propositions in more depth. But all you need to know for the time being is that the 19 propositions is a theory of personality that Rogers put forward and really explains all the theory and beliefs that underlie the person-centred approach. So the final 2 theories that I want to look at are more modern developments in person-centred theory. The first one came from Brian Thorne and Dave Mearns and is called Configurations of Self. What this refers to are the different parts of ourselves that we may be able to relate to. We may have very different parts of ourselves, different ways of being in the world, even different ways of behaving in different contexts. And what the configurations of self refer to are these different ways that we are in the world and the different personalities that we have. Now, the other thing to understand about these is that these different configurations might actually all be congruent. We may act in very different ways in different contexts, but they may all be genuine and fitting for the context we're in. If you think about it, it would be very congruent to be a different way when we're at the football and celebrating our team winning than if we're at a dinner party or meeting some relatives for the first time. We have to act in different ways in different situations, and this is a way to understand our configurations of self. Another thing that's important in the configurations of self is that sometimes these are the things that can cause conflict within us. For example, I may have a configuration of self which is a good boy and a configuration of self which is a bad boy. These both could be congruent, real and genuine, but obviously they would each want to act in different ways in different situations. A lot of the work in therapy can be uncovering these different configurations of self and maybe even opening a dialogue between them to help them understand and communicate with each other. I will make another video that goes into configurations of self in more depth, but for the purpose of this video, it's important to understand that when we hear the term configurations of self, it's basically just referring to the different parts of ourselves and the different personalities and ways of behaving that we might have in different contexts. Now we've made it to the final concept. If you've gone through all the other videos, then you've managed to get through 15, and I think that's a great achievement. The last thing that I want to look at is a term which is relational depth. Now this is a term that came from Mick Cooper and Dave Mearns recently. It's basically talking about the depth of connection that can happen between a therapist and client. It can even happen just outside of the therapy room. It can happen on the bus or on the street. But when they talk about this theory, they're mainly talking about it in a therapeutic environment. And what it refers to is a real depth of relating between therapist and client, where one is impacting on the other and vice versa. There is a very strong connection and knowing between the two people, and they are usually deeply moved by the other. Now, what becomes clear in the writing about relational depth is that actually it's quite hard to capture in words and describe adequately. But more often than not, as a therapist or even as a client, you will know that feeling when you feel a deep sense of connection with the other person, and you are connecting at such a level that it moves you and you feel it on a very deep level. It usually involves a very strong presence of all the core conditions and a very strong relationship between therapist and client. So there we are. We made it to the end of the 15 key concepts in person-centred counselling. If you have any questions on any of the concepts or anything else, then please leave a comment below. And if you haven't already, then please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching these videos.